All right, so you wanted to get a better feel for this White Sox-Tigers rivalry, especially with their series going on right now as we speak. And
Yeah, some really interesting stuff to unpack here.
for sure.
Especially when you consider their latest matchup. So we're talking about the Chicago White Sox and the Detroit Tigers as of April 5th, 2025.
Yep.
And to really dig into this, we've got some great insights from a couple of baseball enthusiasts who are watching this all unfold live at Comerica Park.
Yeah, breaking it all down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're going beyond the box score here, looking back over 100 years of history between these two clubs and also where they stand now in the early part of the season.
So I guess this White Sox-Tigers thing, this isn't like a new rivalry or anything, right? Like we're talking way back.
Deep history, like over 2,200 games played against each other since 1901.
Wow.
So yeah, generations of players and fans have seen these two teams go at it.
I mean, over 2,000 games, you'd think we'd be talking about some, legendary playoff series too, right?
Yeah. Well, that's where things get really interesting and honestly kind of strange.
Yeah.
With all those regular season battles, they've never actually met in the postseason.
Never.
Never in the playoffs.
That's wild.
Pretty remarkable when you think about it. Decades of this rivalry.
Yeah.
But never with, a trip to the World Series on the line or anything like that.
Huh. Well, I guess in a way that makes these regular season games even more important.
Yeah, definitely adds another layer to it.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the game that kind of kicked off this whole discussion, the one on April 4th at Comerica Park.
Right.
I mean, the Tigers pretty much dominated that one, right?
Yeah, they took game one of the series, 7-1.
Just in one title.
It's just one game out of 162, but
Right.
gives you a little snapshot of where these two teams are at right now, at least.
Yeah, and I mean, for the White Sox, they're trying to forget about last year, right?
Oh, man. Try to put that one behind them.
It was rough.
It was a rough one. Their 2024 season was one for the history books, but not in a good way.
Yeah.
Only 41 wins against 121 losses that included a 21-game losing streak.
Oof.
Yeah, statistically one of the worst seasons in modern MLB history.
So new season, fresh start, but they did win on opening day, right?
They did start it off with a bang 8-1 win over the Angels back on March 27th.
Right.
So White Sox fans were feeling pretty good after that one, a sign of maybe better things to come.
Some hope.
Some hope for sure. But then they went 2-4 leading into this series with Detroit.
It's a little bit of a reality check.
Yeah, and that game one loss kind of showed that those offensive struggles from last year might still be lingering.
But didn't they tie the game at some point?
They did, actually. The Tigers made an error in the field.
Ah, okay.
And that let the White Sox tie it up at one of the second inning.
Mm-hmm.
But that was pretty much all they could muster offensively.
Got it.
Meanwhile, the Tigers' bats really came alive after that.
So the Tigers' record so far isn't exactly amazing either, though, right?
They're sitting at 2-4. But believe it or not, that puts them in a 5-way tie for first place in the AL Central.
The whole division?
The whole division's at 2-4 right now.
So every game matters even more, I guess, especially this early.
Huge, especially when you're playing a division rival at home.
Yeah, you got to protect that home field.
Starting off the series with a convincing win like that against a team you're going to see a lot, that definitely builds momentum.
For sure. And who are some of the standout players for them?
Well, Jack Flaherty, their starting pitcher, he had a really good game on the mound. And offensively, Riley Green's been hitting the ball well.
Okay.
He came into the series batting .296 and already had 2 home runs on this season.
Nice. And it sounds like the atmosphere at Comerica Park for that first game was pretty electric.
That was a big one. It was their home opener. They went all out.
Yeah.
We heard Keegan-Michael Key, the actor and comedian, threw out the first pitch. He's from Detroit, so that was cool. They had this huge American flag and even a flyover by an A-10 Thunderbolt jet. It was a whole spectacle.
Wow. So they pulled out all the stops.
They did. And it wasn't just inside the stadium either. Outside, they had this big block party happening on Witherell Street, fans tailgating, grilling all kinds of food.
Yeah.
Burgers, pork tenderloin, playing cornhole, all that good stuff.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. And this year is the 25th anniversary of Comerica Park.
Oh, wow.
So they've done some upgrades, new food options, things like that. Definitely adds to the atmosphere.
So for the folks who couldn't actually go to the game, where could they watch it?
Well, it was on FanDuel Sports Network Detroit for local viewers.
Okay.
And if you weren't in Detroit, you could catch it on MLB.tv.
Got it.
And then for radio listeners, they had it on the Tigers Radio Network and also ESPN Chicago for the White Sox fans.
Nice. So everyone could follow along.
Pretty much. And, before the game even started, the betting odds kind of hinted at how things might go.
Really?
Yeah. The Tigers were pretty big favorites. according to Vivid Seats. They were like minus 257 on the money line.
Okay.
And the over-under for total runs was 7. So, that's what the odds makers were thinking about how much offense we'd see.
Interesting. So we've talked about, the history of this rivalry and what happened in this recent game.
Right.
But with all that history and no playoff series ever, what really keeps this rivalry so intense?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I think part of it is that both teams feel like they could be contenders, even with their ups and downs.
Okay.
Last year was a disaster for the White Sox. But even then, they showed some fight late in the season. They swept the Angels at one point, and their record in September wasn't terrible.
Right.
And, of course, the Tigers made the playoffs in 2024.
Yeah.
So I think both sides feel like they're not that far away from being really good.
So it's like that we could be them or they could be us kind of thing.
Exactly. And then you add in the fans.
Yeah. What are they saying about all this?
Oh, social media, especially X, is a good way to see how they're feeling.
Right.
Tigers fans were loving that opening day win, obviously. And White Sox fans, well, they're getting frustrated, especially with the lack of offense.
Makes sense. I mean, that's part of what makes a rivalry fun, right?
Totally. That back and forth between the fan bases.
Absolutely. And it sounds like the White Sox are trying to keep the fans happy, even with the rough start to the season.
Yeah, this season is their 125th anniversary.
Oh, wow.
So they're doing all these promotions like $5 Tuesdays and a dog day at the park on April 29th.
Yeah.
You got to give them credit for trying to connect with the fans.
For sure. So this series keeps going through Sunday, April 6th. How important are these next couple of games?
Well, the AL Central is a complete mess right now.
How so?
Every team is 2-4.
You're kidding.
Deadlock. So these games against Detroit are really important this early in the season.
Yeah, they could be the difference between, being in first place or being in last place.
Exactly. And you never know who's going to step up in a rivalry series like this.
Any pitchers we should be watching out for?
Jonathan Cannon might get a start for the White Sox.
Okay.
He's a young prospect, so that'll be interesting to see.
Cool. All right. So overall, what's your prediction for this series?
Well, based on that first game
and
how well the Tigers are hitting, I'd say they probably win the series.
At home?
At home.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, the White Sox always have a chance, especially if their pitching holds up.
This rivalry is always unpredictable.
Oh, absolutely. You never know what's going to happen.
So we've really dug into this White Sox-Tigers rivalry, haven't we?
They have.
Over 100 years of history, the Tigers just won a big game to start the series.
Right.
Shows you where these two teams are at right now.
Yeah. And it's still so early, but every game matters, especially in a division like the AL Central.
Absolutely. And no matter what, the fans are always into it.
For sure. That's what makes it fun.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So here's something to think about. The White Sox and the Tigers, they've played each other thousands of times, but never in the playoffs.
Right. Crazy. Right.
What do you think has to happen for these two teams to finally meet in October? And if they did, what would that do to this rivalry? How would it change things?
That's a really good question.
Something to think about.
It is. All right, that's going to do it for this deep dive into the White Sox-Tigers rivalry. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everyone. All right.